Before graphics, before worlds in 3D or alternate reality, there was this, a blinking cursor, a single line of text. You're standing in an open field west of a white house. But behind those words was an entire world, one that the player was invited to discover after the mind of the designer. Zork didn't just show you a world, it asks you to step into the mind of the designer and to begin to imagine a little bit of it yourself. I remember spending far too many hours trying to map out the entire world of Zork. Sometimes it made sense logically and sometimes it didn't. But each step along the way, I was getting into the mind of the designers. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, the mind of the designer, and why that has relevance for us today. Whether we're engaged in actual gameplay like a video game or a treasure hunt or an escape room, or whether you're talking about understanding the mind of the designer of an institution, or you're a student in a classroom, or any part of the designed world where there are human minds behind the design, a building, anything. So let's talk about why this matters. This game Zork for me was an early experiment in learning to get into the mind of the designers of the game who created this world for me to discover and to map out for myself. And I spent hours creating these little maps on paper, drawing out the different rooms and the paths and what made sense and what didn't make sense. I had question marks and I'd fill in the blanks along the way. Sometimes these labyrinths made really clear logical sense, but every so often I'd find myself in a room where it didn't seem to follow the normal rules of the physical world, and I'd have to figure out these new rules, and yet still there was the mind of the designer behind it. That is a really powerful lesson for us. Whether you're talking about trying to understand a treasure hunt that you're participating in, a game, an institution, an organization, a building, or anything else that's human designed, this is a really powerful tool. And if we miss this, if we don't understand what's happening, we're going to be going through a world that was designed to shape and influence us and confuse us and intrigue us and capture our attention or to distract us. It could be all sorts of things. And we're not going to even realize that it's working on us. There's this kind of design literacy that's really important for us today. Because, for example, if you're not literate in terms of words and you can't read a book, the book can't influence you. But you live, and I live, in a designed world. When you step into a game environment, when you step into a film or a video or some other human-designed space, the designer's choices are influencing and shaping you. And if you don't know that they're shaping you, you're missing out on some incredible opportunities. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit in this video. I'm going to talk about it in 5 points, as I often do in my videos. And the first one is simply this: design is a theory of mind that's made visible. So this concept that there's a designer who has an idea or a concept and they want to take that and they want to put it out into the world in the form of a game or a treasure hunt or a building or an institution or a classroom or a piece of clothing or whatever else it might be. There's the mind of the designer, and there's some set of thought that goes into that design. And then they place you into their design, and you get to figure out what that means. The second thing that I talk about is with the game Zork, the idea of a labyrinth, which I've talked about in other videos, is really intriguing. The original labyrinths were these simple mazes, and you would follow the maze, and as long as you kept going and persisting, you would have a common beginning and a center point, and you go back out. It wasn't actually a maze in terms of deceptive paths. It was one path. If you stay on the path, you would get to the destination. Later, it turned into a maze where some paths would lead to a dead end and others would lead elsewhere. But this idea of a labyrinth became sort of the concept that shaped how many people thought about designing environments moving forward, especially in gameplay, but also in other areas of the design world. So what we want to do is begin to think about the designs as labyrinths and try to understand them, try to uncode them, try to discover what it is they're actually doing and how they're designed. And the more we understand the design, the more we can make use of it. And the more we can agree with it or disagree with it and make our own choices. A third thing to note is when it comes to designs, especially like one we have in Zork, is many people are thinking about these incredibly complex designs, like in films and modern cinematography and alternate reality worlds, and those are indeed fascinating. But constraint is one of the purest forms of design, and we see this in the game of Zork. I'm a big fan of stepping back into history and starting with these simple designs and cutting our teeth on them and learning from them, and then we can move into the more modern and complex designs. But these early ones are a great practice ground, a great place to learn and understand how design principles work. And then you can add the layers of complexity later on. Fourth point here is every unsolved puzzle is a kind of mirror. The moment that you're stuck in a game or an organization or a social system or a building, I guess, you're seeing the gap between your mental model and the mental model of the designer. So the wisdom comes when you start to use that kind of trap, that kind of being stuck, that being having something unsolved. You use that as a motive to build deeper insight, to cultivate more understanding, more wisdom, always knowing that you're working in a world that was designed by someone else. Then the last one is to keep in mind that that labyrinth literacy or design literacy is really incredible, almost like a superpower today. Many people go through their lives not realizing that they are walking through a designed world, a world with many, many different designs by different people. And if they miss that, they don't realize that every piece of news that they're encountering, that every film that they're watching, that every game they're playing, and every building they're walking into, even the gardens that are designed by different people, they were designed by people with something in their mind. And it's an invitation for you to understand a little bit of their thinking and to understand how it works, and then you can navigate it better. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.